In 1982, in the middle of one of the bloodiest wars of the 20th century, 23 boys disappeared. They weren't officers. They weren't seasoned soldiers. They weren't even adults. They were teenagers, and within weeks they would find themselves standing inside the palace of one of the most feared men in the Middle East, Saddam Hussein. This is their story. The year was 1982. The Iran-Iraq War had already consumed hundreds of thousands of lives. Cities were shelled. Trenches stretched across the desert. Entire generations were pulled toward the front lines. In southeastern Iran, in the province of Kerman, 23 boys volunteered for war. They were between 13 and 17 years old. Some had barely finished middle school. Some had lied about their age. Some carried school notebooks in their bags alongside ammunition. They joined a unit affiliated with the Tharala Brigade and were sent north into one of the war's most decisive campaigns, Operation Bait ol-Muqaddas. The objective was to retake the strategic city of Khorramshahr. The fighting was chaotic, brutal, relentless. And then it happened. Cut off from reinforcements, surrounded, outgunned. The 23 boys were captured by Iraqi forces. In a single moment, their war changed from survival in battle to survival in captivity. When news reached Baghdad that the captured prisoners were children, Iraqi leadership saw something unexpected: a propaganda opportunity. The boys were separated from other prisoners of war. They were cleaned up, given new clothes, and then transported to Baghdad. There, inside one of the presidential palaces, the 23 teenagers were brought face to face with Saddam Hussein himself. Cameras rolled, photographs were taken. In one widely circulated image, Saddam appears smiling, placing a paternal hand on one of the boys. His daughter reportedly offered them flowers. Iraqi media broadcast the moment across the region. The message was clear. Look how kindly Iraq treats its prisoners. Look at these children sent to fight by Iran. But behind the staged smiles, the boys understood what was happening. They were not guests. They were symbols, and symbols can be powerful weapons. After the palace appearance, the boys were transferred back into detention. The cameras were gone. The lights were gone. The spectacle was over. What remained was imprisonment. They were teenagers trying to grow up inside prison camps. They marked birthdays quietly. They argued. They laughed. They tried to hold on to pieces of childhood. They formed a pact to stay united, no matter what. At one point, frustrated by conditions and pressure to cooperate in propaganda efforts, they organized a hunger strike, not as soldiers, but as boys who refused to be manipulated. Days passed. Weakness set in. Tension rose. Eventually, authorities backed down from some of the pressure placed on them. It was a small victory, but it was theirs. Meanwhile, the war dragged on. The boys slowly became young men behind barbed wire. Outside the camps, the Iran-Iraq War would continue until 1988. But even after the ceasefire, their release did not come immediately. They remained prisoners until August 26, 1991, nearly 9 years after their capture. Imagine entering captivity at 14 and walking out at 23. Years later, one of the former captives, Ahmad Yousefzadeh, began writing down what had happened. The result was a memoir titled Those 23 People, a first-hand account of adolescence interrupted by war. The book resonated deeply in Iran. In 2019, it was adapted into a feature film titled 23 People, directed by Mehdi Jafari. The former prisoners attended screenings. They watched actors portray their younger selves, frightened, defiant, hopeful. Their story, once used as propaganda, had been reclaimed. History often tells us about generals, about borders, about victories and defeats. But sometimes the most powerful stories belong to those who were never meant to be symbols at all. 23 teenagers, caught between two nations at war, paraded in a dictator's palace, and held for nearly a decade. They survived not because they were powerful, but because they refused to stop being human.